Artificial intelligence is reinventing business as we speak. You can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Cognitive Path founders Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they chat with AI experts about the latest ideas, trends, and technologies that are creating the future of business today. This is No Brainer.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino. Welcome to No Brainer. I'm here as always with Geoff Livingston. How are you, Geoff?
Good morning, Greg. How are you today?
I am doing well. I've already seen a lot of you this morning, but it's always good to see you again.
Yeah, and we're winding up for Thanksgiving. I don't know about you, but I am getting excited about all the different things I'm going to eat. I think you'll get the joke on this one, but I ate a lot of mac and cheese yesterday getting ready for Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Good. And maybe there'll be more mac and cheese in your future.
Even some seafood fettuccine, dare I say.
I feel like we should just start a food podcast at this point. But why don't we dive in today? We've got another great guest, a longtime listener, first-time caller, Lisa Nirell. Geoff, why don't you introduce Lisa properly, since that was hardly a proper introduction, and then let's dive right into the content.
Yeah, so Lisa is somebody that most folks on LinkedIn probably already know. She is one of the most foremost advisors of CMOs in the marketplace and has been for quite some time. So it's not like this is a flash in the pan. Lisa's been doing this as long as I've known her, which is getting into 2 decades now. And her book, I believe, was called The Mindful Marketer. Am I right?
That was my second book, yes.
Yes. So, an established author, an established podcaster, an established speaker, thought leader, and for some reason, she seems to listen to us and even has done a really good job of making me really, really paranoid about cursing, which doesn't stop me anyway, but I just realize it as soon as we do it. And she's been kind of a running joke on the show every time I do curse. So, look, I don't even know why we haven't had her on yet. I don't know.
But I have promised Lisa that you're going to try to keep it relatively clean. But welcome, Lisa.
God damn, Lisa, welcome.
And off we go to the races. Good to be here, gentlemen.
Good to see you, my friend. So look, did we do our usual punch the subscribe button thing? I forget.
We have, and I kind of skipped past it, but I will remind folks, of course, as always, please be sure to do all the kind of algorithmic good stuff. This is an AI podcast after all, so be sure to goose those algorithms with your likes, your thumbs ups, or thumbs up, perhaps. I'm not sure which is right. Please sure to subscribe, to rate, to review, to follow, to friend, to get on friend feed and plurk and do all the kind of good sharing you do on social media. Please be sure to help us goose the algorithms, get in front of more people, and share what we share.
That's it. All right. So let's get into it. Now, we said we're going to talk about this interesting kind of gauge of AI readiness that you published, a test, if you would, or a test drive, I should say. But before we do that, I think we would be remiss. This is going to publish next week, and we're going to be coming up on the 2-year anniversary of ChatGPT. What's your take on this kind of crossing the chasm moment that happened then? Where are we now?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you again for having me here on the show, and happy anniversary to OpenAI. May their transition to a for-profit organization actually happen so that they don't have any penalties for the organization transition that they need to actually bring to life.
Yes.
And the 2-year anniversary, the last 2 years have moved pretty quickly, and all we see right now is a continued race to the top. And that's all I continue to see is every time I'm listening to a podcast, including yours, or I'm reading about the latest and greatest news in the generative AI market race, it seems as if the funding is still flowing very freely. So I don't really know what we can all expect at this point in terms of which cream is going to rise to the top and which player is really going to capture the flag. I just don't, I think we're just in the thick of it right now. And now we need organizations to actually catch up and leverage the incredible capacity available to them through effective and ethical use of generative AI.
Interesting. Mr.
Absolutely.
Verdino.
I mean, that's the big thing, right, Lisa, is the technology is moving fast. It's going to move fast. And I know there's a lot of conversation now about whether large language models in particular are kind of tapping out and that the level of innovation is slowing there, which is not surprising, right? And it doesn't mean that companies like OpenAI or Anthropic or the big, tech players aren't going to, kind of shift their emphasis to new and different forms of AI, different kinds of models, algorithms. We're already seeing the move towards agents. We're hearing a lot of talk about reasoning. And certainly there are wholly other ways of training machines other than just dumping the world's data into them. But I think, to me, the last couple of years has been so heavily dominated by the tech hype and I think the struggle organizations have had to get past experimentation and to really do what you just described, which is, kind of buckle down, think about the real business implications, adopt these things in responsible ways that are tied to real business returns, but also do no harm, and, really kind of start to kind of join the AI revolution in a serious way, not just, my employees play around with ChatGPT, but it is embedded into the way my organization operates, it's embedded into my strategy. Are you hearing, as you talk to a lot of CMOs and a lot of executives, are you hearing that that's happening?
I get conversations, I hear from people almost daily on LinkedIn, because now I've got about 23,000 people who've taken my online courses and follow me on LinkedIn. So I get to hear a lot of things behind the scenes there. And then I just spoke at the Voice in AI conference.
Right.
And so what I did is I wandered about, and of course, while hosting my talk there, I asked people, what stage are you at? What's your current understanding of generative AI and its potential? And combined with what people told me privately from very big brands that I won't name here, as well as when I walked around and talked to the exhibitors. And I said, what are people asking you? What's their curiosity around generative AI? Now, Geoff, you were there. This is Washington, D.C.
Right,
okay?
The District of Corruption, baby.
One of the headquarters of human suffering. And also one of the headquarters of great technology innovation.
Actually, truth, and
Yep.
bigger than Silicon Valley for the amount of developers, but it's all black box, so
Yep.
we don't talk about it.
And so I asked these companies the size of SaaS, as well as the many AI startups that had booths at the show. And they said, well, the number one question that we're getting is, how do I get started in generative AI?
Boy, I think what this speaks to, and this gets to Greg's answer or response or thoughts on the hype wave too, is, what we've really seen is this, I would say, seismic failure. And I come at this from the historical perspective as a marketer, right? From the product marketing standpoint with the algorithm companies. And those are really the ones that have dominated the hype cycle, where they published, even in the case of ChatGPT, as a demonstration of what the technology can do, because that's originally what ChatGPT was. Like, look, this algorithm can do this, right? It can be an answer engine. To really create pragmatic business application for it. And it's almost like the agent wave that we're hearing about now is a reboot of that prior conversation to make that pragmatic, hey, here's how it can be actually impactful in this small niche agent use case for your enterprise within Salesforce or whatever X application is. Mm-hmm. And I think what's happened is these guys were so busy drumming up hype to get their valuations up, and this is just hindsight 2 years down, that they they failed to miss what the market actually needed. And as we're seeing things kind of, I guess, get into the big tech normal paths of adoption, you have Google with Gemini, you have Microsoft, and in a weird kind of maybe dysfunctional relationship with OpenAI, and Anthropic is being forced to partner with Amazon in depth, right? And you're seeing like almost these three leaders emerge that are driving through the big cloud implementations, and the big cloud drivers are including some of the niche applications like Salesforce, although I wouldn't call it a niche. But, like these bigger players are basically driving adoption because the algorithm startups failed to do so.
All I can share are examples from my clients. I had a company that is in the financial services industry with a focus on residential real estate. And they tried so hard. One of my clients is the EVP of marketing, and they really are risk takers, and they want to really take a position of being first in their industry because it's so competitive. And the industry they're in is so ripe for disruption. So they brought together an entire business case, presented it to the new president and CEO, and said, here's why we need to invest in generative AI, and here are some initial business problems we can help solve, and some efficiencies, particularly with our loan officers. And the Department of No stepped in, shut it all down, and this is a story I am hearing repeatedly, is first of all, the departments of no will step in and shut down some initial experimentation or AI council efficacy. That's number one. And number two is the lack of education. So the senior executives are not educated. They only get snippets, Geoff, like you mentioned earlier, of what the players are doing in the marketplace, but they don't fully understand the seismic cultural shift this introduces. I've got many other examples of that, which is forcing my clients, who are all CEOs, board leaders, and chief marketing officers, to step back and say, okay, let's look at this through the lens of our organization culture, our people, and what kind of transformation this really represents, so we can start our cause. We can start to build a vision that gets people excited, even if it starts small scale.
Absolutely. And Geoff is probably tired, as are the listeners, I'm sure, of me kind of hearkening back to whether it's the social media revolution, whether it's digital transformation broadly, and now it's the same old story with AI, is leaders have tended to make the mistake of thinking technology equals transformation. And they miss out on the far more significant obstacles that get thrown in their way that are cultural, right? That are about people, that are about process, that are about structure, that are about all these things that don't look or sound like technology, but cause these organizations to fall hopelessly behind. And that's the same, to me, that's exactly what you're describing here, is the importance of good leadership, good communication, rethinking culture, rethinking organizational structures and silos and all these other things that kind of create these gaps in the ability to adapt to these changes that are happening in, whether it's technology or really anything. But, in this case, particularly technology in the form of artificial intelligence. They almost assume, we're hearing it does X, so if we slap a little bit of X, not Elon Musk's X, but if we slap a little of technology X into the organization, we've done it. We've done our AI transformation. It's like no. How do you counsel clients against making that mistake?
Or is that part of why you built the test drive?
Yes, well, the test drive, so everyone that's listening to this right now, I've developed an AI strategy test drive, which contains 26 key points or key elements for you to consider. It might take you 5 to 10 minutes to do this survey. I give it away. You can contact me, Lisa at lisanirell.com, and get a copy. And the reason I put it together, and it took me 2.5 years to put this together. And the reason it took me 2.5 years is I wanted time. I wanted to go slow to go fast. And I wanted to find out, where are people getting tripped up? I have lived through at least 2 other massive cultural transformations. Probably more. I've lived through the
Don't
PC
date yourself.
revolution.
Don't do it.
I'm doing it. No, I'm one of the few women who's not afraid to say she's 63. So I've made it through the PC revolution. I made it through the
So's
internet
Greg, by the way.
revolution. I made it and thrived through COVID. So I've made it through 3 big revolutions in our time.
Right.
And so I wanted to let all of this kind of metabolize for a while. And so I look at 4 areas on this test drive. And they're in this order for a very specific reason. We start with people. Then we look at practices. In other words, what are the practices, habits, and rituals in your organization? We look at planning. Again, to your point, Greg, planning may not sound very sexy.
Right.
But planning is important when you're leading teams towards a bigger and better future. And number 4 is platforms. I made platforms last. And yet, so many of us obsess about what's going on at OpenAI versus Perplexity. And I'm saying, folks, don't get too distracted. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Focus first on these key elements of people, such as, and again, all based on what my clients are struggling with right now. Does your organization encourage, as Professor Amy Edmondson of Harvard talks about, do you encourage intelligent failures, where you allocate money to allow people to go and experiment and try out some use cases with a very finite time frame and very limited budget? That's where a lot of us do our best work.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeff and I were just smiling at each other because we literally had that very same conversation with a client today. And many organizations obviously don't have a culture of failing forward or whatever you want to call it. But it's critical, right? In an environment where things are moving so quickly and the change is likely to be so substantial, not being willing and able to execute and then absorb failure is a huge challenge. Love it.
Yes, and Amy, so anyone that's listening to this, make sure that you're really familiar with her. I love all of her books, but Right Kind of Wrong is her newest book. And I had the joy of spending some time with her at the Thinkers 50 event in London last year. And she has studied so many organizations who have learned to, as you said, Greg, fail well, and has some great examples. And I really love that your cat agrees with me right now.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to go on mute.
I just love, this is the part of our new life, of this, this new culture we operate under. I imagine 10 years ago, if someone heard somebody's dog barking or cat meowing in the background, they'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening.
I know.
And now it's so endearing. It's so joyful, right?
Welcome to being human, right?
Like that
Yeah.
scandal,
Yes.
that huge, we went viral when that dude, like the historian or whatever, was on the BBC and his kids came bursting in the room, and now that's Tuesday.
Right.
For sure,
And
for
so
sure.
thank you. You just illustrated why in this survey, I really put people first. There's a reason I did it. It's very intentional. The other one that trips up my clients a lot is the amount of time they have people parading in their office asking them, will AI replace me?
It's
And I
interesting.
have a chief digital officer who runs a revenue and digital for a major nonprofit. And they've been a client of mine for some time, and they said, I have a project plan. We had a vision, and yet this is slowing me down so much. Just sitting one-on-one with people to explain to them what's possible and where we're going, and that we really want them on the team. We're not trying to replace them. And how do we get them to shift their mindset from this doom and gloom, fixed mindset of, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, to look at all of these learning opportunities where I can test out generative AI and improve my customer's condition in some way.
Yeah. And your employees' condition in other ways, right? How can this make work easier, better, more effective, more efficient, ultimately more rewarding for the human beings that make up the company?
So I forget where I saw it. There was a study that was published, and it was from a reputable organization. I almost want to say it was HBR, but I'm unsure, where it showed that literally some people are losing their jobs though already, and displacement's happening, particularly on the marketing stack with writers, where they're seeing. I think they based their determination that this was happening was on job postings. There's 1/3 the amount of writing. Let me rephrase that. There are 65% of the amount of job postings for writers that there were 2 years ago before ChatGPT launched, and that there was a similar reduction even with graphic designers and photographers of about 20%. But I think there's something to be said about what type of organization does that based off of the quality that we've seen that these things produce left to their own devices. I don't know. Is there an air of legitimacy to this fear based off of the way just some businesses are bottom line oriented?
Yes, well, we can learn our way out of a lot of self-inflicted catastrophizing. I'll tell you an example. I mean, my best friend and I, when COVID hit, I went from being on the road almost every week doing keynotes and visiting clients to suddenly being locked up in my house. And he said, let's use this time to improve our communications and be more flexible, and let's set up studios. Let's learn how to design a studio and reach more and help more people that way. And here I am. I still have my studio. I have now like 18 more online courses than I did pre-COVID. I'm able to help more people, and I was able to pivot. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. I'm saying I was at a choice at that moment. I could have said, "Oh my gosh, my business is going to collapse," or I can say, "Wow, I'm curious what I can create next."
Yeah.
And I tried a bunch of things, and one thing that stuck was that I built with help from Bill, one of my colleagues in Portland. I was able to develop the studio and continue, and then launch a live stream and a podcast. So I said, this is the new reality, and I'm excited, and I'm okay if I make some mistakes along the way.
That's good. That's really good. I love the lifelong learning. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
I actually call it long life learning.
There you go.
Because I know that learning is one of the things that keeps me really energized about life and opportunity, and allows me to kind of, how do I say this, rapidly digest the vicissitudes of the socio-political climate that we live in the United States and the world. So I'm going to stick to long life learning.
I like it.
If there's one thing I think that the three of us have in common, it's not baldness.
Thank God for Lisa.
It's 2 out of 3, though. But if there's one thing the three of us seem to have in common, it's that we've kind of lived through, and you've kind of referenced this a bit as well, Lisa, that we've lived through these substantial shifts I mean, and of course, many people have, right? But we've gone through like, you know, the PC age, the COVID age, the emergence of social, the digital transformation of everything, the AI revolution, right? And we've managed...
Even AOL too.
AOL. You have mail. And you know, I think each one of us have maintained this sort of stance of adaptability in the face of that change, right? Where we've been curious, we've embraced the change, we've, to one extent or another, successfully or unsuccessfully, kind of moved with the flowing tides into new spaces, right? And I even hear that from a lot of people that I've known for a long time that have been marketers, let's say, who are continually amazed, like, oh, you're always on the cutting edge of the next new thing. And to me, it's not some great achievement. It's not a pat myself on the back. It's just staying curious and flexible and adaptable. And I see people who are, you know, have been in the very same field for the very same number of years who have gotten stuck, who, you know, are still doing the same things they did 20 or 30 years ago, scratching their heads about why as a 50-something they're no longer quite so employable. And, you know, even now are like, well, AI is not for me. How do people move past that fixed mindset and really kind of dive into this? Because I know you're looking at this from sort of a leadership perspective in a lot of ways. As a coach and an advisor to so many senior executives, you're not coming at it from a technology-first perspective. You know, technology is a piece of it, right? But as you said, and as your scorecard clearly demonstrates, right, that's not the biggest piece of it. The platforms come last. So how do you, I guess, encourage people to make that shift in mindset and really embrace this stuff to be part of the change rather than being afraid of the change?
Yes, well, the first thing that I have to do is make sure that they have certain qualities about them. And this is not a judgment call, but are they curious? Are they long life learners? What was the last course that they took, or the last time that they took a class on something where they were not a master? Mm-hmm. That tells me so much about a person. And that tells me that no matter what their age, that they have the capacity and the persistence to learn something new and have a sense of humor when they trip and fall a couple of times. And the second thing I look for is who's in their kitchen cabinet. With whom do they surround themselves? You know, as I think it was Jim Rohn who said, you know, pick your friends, pick your future. And so where are they spending their time, and what kind of people are in their web? I mean, the reason I just launched our second peer group, which is called the Alchemist Group, that came out of our Santa Fe retreat in October, is because the reason I put that together is because people that came to that session had a vision of how they wanted to transition their organizations to a new and improved state, or they themselves are going through a big, challenging, high-stakes midlife transition. And I said to them, I have little to no evidence that people make it through these big transitions hiding out in their office and reading books by themselves. So they're holding each other accountable, they're having breakthroughs, and it's very rewarding to see that happen. So that's the second quality I look for, is are they willing to put themselves in those kinds of supportive, challenging environments with people who are caring and also equally curious learners.
How important is a positive mindset with that? I mean, I feel like we're not guaranteed success, but we're definitely going to guarantee ourselves failure to that 20-year career standpoint, where if we're just sitting there not changing, not evolving. How important is it with these communities that you're working with to say, hey, if you do continue to, I guess, fail forward or experiment. I don't like the fail forward metaphor necessarily, but like experiment and try things out. you'll find the way if you continue to apply yourself, that this is a possibility, and it doesn't matter where you've been or where you are now, that if you do this, you can make it. You just have to commit to it.
So are you asking how important that kind of community, the positivity is in the community?
Yeah, the kitchen cabinet. How important is that kitchen cabinet from a motivational standpoint of encouraging people forward to helping pick each other up, that kind of thing?
Well, I think it's essential, and we don't have to go far to find out that here, at least here in the United States, loneliness is truly an epidemic. And I just got off a meeting today with a client who is dealing with a sales team member who is dealing with addiction. And it breaks my heart. There is a lot of, people are self-medicating and looking for easy ways out of their challenges, and supportive groups that can help you achieve and sustain what I call third vault conversations are priceless. And I'll explain what I mean by third vault. So I'm a graduate of a fantastic program called MEA, Modern Elder Academy, and just co-led a retreat with the chairman of the board there and the co-founder, Chip Conley, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And one of the other graduates is a gentleman by the name of Aaron Taylor, who's a two-time Super Bowl champion. And he said one of the reasons he loves MEA and he loves the community that he stayed with after he finished the retreat is that people there are able to have these third vault conversations. The first vault conversations that you and I are very familiar with are when you are sitting with people who are only interested in hearing the facts of your life. Second vault is where you start to get into the story of your life. Maybe tell a little bit about the cats that Geoff has, or something about Greg's passion for New York and some of the your cultural interests. But third vault conversations really bring people into the soul of your life, talking about your hopes, dreams, fears, and aspirations. And so finding a community that's level 3, that third vault conversation, can move things forward very quickly, or when needed, hold you when you just need to vent.
Right.
Or like one of my clients who lost their father earlier this year, they came to the retreat and they needed 3 days to cry. Did we predict they were going to spend 3 days crying? No.
There's no chat GPT for that.
Did they find it cathartic? Absolutely. Is their business going to flourish because of it? Absolutely, because they broke through the stuckness of grieving that otherwise would have been stuck and pushed down, and they wanted to hope it would just, quote, go away. And as you know, grief doesn't just go away. It has to be processed.
So when I'm looking to bring it back to the test drive, I mean, it looks like a lot of the conversation around people is about that kitchen cabinet in a way. It is about whether or not the organization is ready to go through this process of really experimenting their way into a successful culture that has taken this new technology or any new technology into place. I think this is very universal. I'm sure you could switch out the words AI for any technology. What are your thoughts?
Yes, one of the data points on the test drive that people will see, and again, people can contact me for this, it's Lisa at lisanirell.com. One of the points that they have to answer on a scale of 1 to 5 is we consistently recognize team members in group settings for taking calculated risks and experimenting. So I want to encourage every leader listening to this. When was the last time that you had a group meeting or a team meeting and you recognized somebody and rewarded somebody among their peers for learning, running an experiment and not getting the results they had hoped?
Dino, any
and
thoughts on it?
learning and saying, here are the 3 things we learned from this, and this is why we're going to run these 25 other experiments. Or if you're Visa, which just announced they're running 500 use cases for AI right now. So how many leaders have the, I'll be swearing here, how many leaders have the cojones
That's like PG.
On that one, no.
to publicly recognize the risk takers?
Yeah, absolutely.
It matters. Yeah,
It does
for
matter.
sure.
Why don't we take a quick break, hear from our sponsors, let people wrap their heads around this for a couple of minutes. Please do be sure, even if you have 2 minutes listening to commercials, go to Lisa's site, download the scorecard, and we will be sharing a link to that on our on nobrainerpodcast.com as well. But please be sure to grab it, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the pod where we have the cojones to talk about your culture and how AI works. So with that, I want to get back to Lisa Nirell and her AI test drive and really assessing your readiness. So we talked a great deal already about organizational and leadership readiness, the kind of getting ready for that mindset to embrace something new and experiment through it. In addition to that, the test drive talks a lot about planning and really about creating process and strategically thinking about how not to create an AI strategy per se, but how to integrate AI within the larger business process and strategy. Can you discuss kind of your angle on that and why you thought it was important for the test drive?
Most definitely. So now that we're celebrating our 12th year of hosting the Marketing Growth Leaders peer community, there is a universal need for our marketing leaders, about half of whom now own a percentage of the revenue targets for their companies, to consistently ask very strategic questions as they're planning for the year ahead. And one of them, again, this may sound very pedestrian, but it's often overlooked, is our AI vision something that aligns with our organization strategy?
It's a big miss. A lot of people miss it, right?
Yeah, that's the weird thing, right? These things that sound like, well, of course, it's like everyone's getting it wrong, right? It sounds so fundamental, and it is fundamental, but it sounds obvious, but it's not.
Yes. And another point, Geoff, that we look at in the planning, and our job is to help people just get a sense of the truth. Where are we today? We cannot build a vision for the future if we don't know our current state. Another is we know how to measure our success. So there are 2 sides to that have to be looked at, because as you pointed out earlier, I look at life and I look at any transformative shift in our society through a holistic lens. So I want people to look at changes in behavior of your customer or of your stakeholders internally. And I also want you to look at your OKRs and your performance targets and say, do we know how we're going to measure our success? Now, for 95% of my audience, success to them may be something as simple as our top 2 senior leadership levels have agreed to and registered for generative AI classes. I know that sounds very fundamental, and it can make the difference between really leading transformation and being effective in your industry and maintaining market share and falling behind.
Absolutely.
So it might be that simple for the next 3 to 6 months. And a third one is that we adjust our AI priorities quickly that allow us to adapt to changes in the market or in our customer base. I go back to an interview that Tim Cook just had with the Wall Street Journal. And I love when he said to them, we were not the first to do intelligence, but we have done it in a way that we think is the best for the customer.
I mean, that's
So,
absolute brilliance.
perfect, right? They're not first,
Right.
but as they say, we're the best.
Yeah, and to go back to what Geoff said earlier, right? So many of these AI companies have kind of missed the product market fit test, right? They have great technology. I will argue to this moment, Sam Altman truly does not understand how people want to use his technology. I don't know that he cares, but he certainly doesn't understand it. And Tim Cook is not the kind of guy, and Apple is not the kind of company that makes that mistake, right? And they got all that slack for being slow to the party, but it is obvious, and of course it hasn't fully rolled out, and there have been some hits and misses as they've begun to trickle it out, but nobody can argue that Apple hasn't put the customer first, at least in the way they've planned their AI rollout, right? You don't need to be first, you need to be best.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it seems to be working for them. So those are some things that I really encourage people to consider when you're doing this test drive and checking your readiness. And another is this, I see this as a golden moment for every leader listening to this to upskill your team. Because this process of proposing use cases, of asking top people on your team to join the AI Council, it's such a wonderful, again, I have a growth mindset. I'm like, this is a career opportunity like no other. And one of the things that you can coach your teams to do is to have them clearly explain what business problems or new untapped market opportunities a potential AI use case can address. So, coach them, cultivate that kind of strategic thinking, and so they understand how their jobs could tie to the growth of the organization and greater happiness with your customers.
Pretty awesome. We're coming to the end of our time together, and I don't want to steal all the thunder out of your test drive, so people should definitely check it out again at lisanirell.com. We will post the link, or email Lisa at lisanirell.com. But I know you don't like picking up the crystal ball and putting that stake in the ground. So I want to ask you a different kind of softer question, which is, what are your hopes for how this thing turns out, this whole AI movement? Given your 3 prior movement experience, like, how do you really want to see people in about 5 years and the way they think about AI and, just generally business and these new tools?
Well, I go back to another writer who I greatly admire is Maria Popova. And if anyone gets her newsletter, it's called The Marginalian. And it's a long-form blog post that I look forward to every week. Well, I think once a month, actually. She really turned me on to this whole concept of the ladder of understanding. So my hope, if you look at the ladder of understanding that she lays out, she says, humanity, at the bottom of the pyramid is information. Information is now a big commodity in our society, and that's why so many media companies are facing disruption. The second layer or level is knowledge, which is the synthesis of disparate sources of information. And at the pinnacle of that pyramid is wisdom. Wisdom is the metabolized experiences. And as my friend Chip Conley says, our painful life lessons are the foundation for our future wisdom. And I hope that humanity sees how much generative AI is making information and knowledge more democratized and making room and time for humans to cultivate joy, love, and more wisdom to make this world a better place. And hopefully I don't sound like Sandra Bullock in that famous movie that she did as a beauty queen. But, I'm not saying world peace is in our future. What I am saying, though, is let's seize this opportunity to make more time to cultivate what our world really needs right now, which is they need people to cultivate their wisdom and share it more broadly with others, and let the machines do some of the other more routine work.
Love it. Love it. What a great way to end the pod. Thank you, Lisa. Mr. Greg, do you want to take us out?
I will take us out then. I feel like taking us out is sure to be a letdown after that. All of that wisdom Lisa has shared, but we really took this pod in the direction of not technology, but humanity. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, this is a human revolution, not just a technology revolution. So thank you, Lisa, so much for sharing all of your fantastic ideas. Again, everybody, please be sure to check out Lisa's test drive. We've shared, and she shared her links and email address and all that good stuff many, many times. But Lisa, one more time, please remind people where they can find you, and if they want to connect with you directly, how can they do that?
Well, one place you can go and get some immediate downloads is themindfulmarketer.com. You don't have to be a marketer to gain value from those resources, or drop me an email to lisa@lisanirell.com. And thank you guys for having me. I really enjoyed this today.
It was fun. It was a great conversation.
It was great. Phenomenal conversation. Hopefully everybody out there enjoyed it and got a lot of value. Hopefully it will make you be more mindful of the things you are doing with AI in your life and in your organization. If you don't mind, please, again, be sure to follow our channel, to like it, to link it, to love it, comment, to ask questions. We do take questions and comments. The link to our email address is, of course, at nobrainerpodcast.com. Any feedback on the show is much appreciated. Any suggestions for future shows, future guests, topics, things like that, we are also more than happy to take. And as Geoff likes to occasionally point out, we do a mailbag episode now and then. I believe one of Lisa's questions was on our last mailbag, and you can go back and find that episode as well to see what was on Lisa's mind way back then. In the meantime, hope everybody has a fantastic Thanksgiving if you are here in the States and celebrate Thanksgiving. And please be sure to join us next time around. We're looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much. Take care.